Thank you, Herman. Is the audio level all right? I was going to apologize for having no lovely modern PowerPoint things, but Erwin is such a crackerjack kid, man, that he could whip this together in 15, 20 minutes, so now I have a very professional looking presentation, rather than just droning on like I usually do. There's an old saying which reveals another good motive for living nobly. When one receives a drop of kindness, one should repay it with a bubbling spring. Perhaps this is from China, I'm not sure. Master Moria mentioned the debt of gratitude as being sacred. Feeling grateful is nice, but it is not really adequate, especially since we are all a unity and of one life. We must not block circulation of the harmonious forces of compassion, sympathy, and friendliness. First slide. Here's our beloved Helena Petrovna. This is from the key. Duty is that which is due to humanity, especially that which we owe to all those who are poorer and more helpless than we are ourselves. This is a debt which, if left unpaid during life, leaves us spiritually insolvent and moral bankrupts in our next incarnation. Theosophy is the quintessence of duty. Blavatsky was not explicit about why we owe this debt, but I suspect it was because of our indifferent attitude to the past drops of kindness that we accepted gladly but did nothing about. We did nothing to keep the kindness flowing freely. Our sacred duty is to repay the showers of kindness we've received over many lifetimes from Buddhas, masters, gods, parents, and the rest of humanity. This divine duty will move us to tap our own bubbling spring of virtues. These will flow forth from our fountainhead of utter wisdom, as Paruker called it. Next, if we truly wish to join in and work with the altruist army, then we need to recall the advice of Nagarjuna Bodhisattva about the 3 selfless resolutions or vows that will certainly lead one to become a bodhisattva who will always benefit all beings. Where the Buddha has instructed one in a past life or vision to generate this resolve, this is uncommon, of course. Number 2, where one generates resolve in order to protect the Dharma. Or thirdly, where one generates resolve on account of pity for suffering beings. Those possessed of at least one of the 3 motivations of this sort will definitely find success. Bodhicitta resolve or aspiration alone is good, but practicing bodhicitta with the paramitas or perfections of virtue is better. Bodhicitta means wise mind and refers to the aspiration to become someone who works for the spiritual progress of all beings, far into the future. For maximum effectiveness, bodhicitta vows must be based on refuge in the triple jewel of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Dharma is Buddha's teaching, and Sangha means his bodhisattva disciples. When Franz Hartmann formerly took refuge, as Blavatsky and Alcott did some years earlier, Master M wrote him a note in 1884 saying, "Above all, try to find yourself, and the path of knowledge will open itself before you, and this so much the easier as you have made a contact with the light ray of the Blessed One, Buddha, whose name you have now taken as your spiritual lodestar. Receive in advance my blessings and thanks." Blavatsky gives a deeper meaning to the 3 jewels in her Theosophical glossary. The words Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha ought to be pronounced as in the days of Gautama, the Lord Buddha, namely Bodhi, Dharma, and Sangha, and interpreted to mean wisdom, its laws, and priests, the latter in the sense of spiritual exponents or adepts. This goal of becoming a bodhisattva is worthy of any sacrifice, as a sutra tells us. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, compassion incarnate, asked the Buddha, "Why do you say the emergence of bodhisattvas is the most excellent among living beings?" The Buddha replied, there are 4 reasons. 1, because it is constructed on ultimately pure foundations of good. 2, because it is chosen intentionally with conscious discernment. Because it is based on compassion to liberate beings. And 4, because one can purify oneself and therefore remove the defilements of others. Avalokiteshvara then follows up with, well, why do you say bodhisattvas carry out far-reaching vows, marvelous vows, excellent vows? The Buddha replied, for 4 reasons. Bodhisattvas do know the bliss of nirvana very well and can quickly realize it, yet they relinquish immediate experience of the state of bliss and arouse a mind of great aspiration to benefit living beings without a personal object or expectation. And therefore they remain in the midst of many kinds of suffering over a long time. That is why I say that bodhisattvas carry out far-reaching, marvelous, excellent vows. Before focusing on any golden paramita keys to the portals that open into higher realms of consciousness, let us recall some more fundamentals of this path. The Mahatma letters mention the basic methods, of which these 3 are the most important. Chastity of thought, word, and deed, government of the animal passions and impulses, and utter unselfishness of intention. Without this needed preliminary purification, the practice of the paramitas will be feeble and fruitless. It may even lead to hypocrisy. The refinement of our 3 poisons of greed, anger, and stupidity, or attraction, repulsion, and stagnation, is fulfilled by using 3 principles. One of those rare supreme adepts, Tsongkhapa, taught them as renunciation of greed and animal passions. Secondly, utter unselfish, compassionate bodhicitta that replaces anger and irritation. The 3rd principle is vast wisdom instead of our normal foolishness. One can see how the first 2 perfections of giving and virtue help to remove low desire and animal passions. Then number 3, unruffled patience, redeems anger, hate, and irritability. Paramitas 5 and 6 transmute our stupid, foolish minds into great wisdom. Energy, the 4th one, empowers all the other 5. HPB's central paramita of vairagya, or dispassion, or non-attachment, pervades all the others. As Buddha taught, vairagya, I could be mispronouncing it, I'm sorry, or vairagya or non-attachment is the best of all things. And vairagya in this case means nirvana. The last 4 paramitas of the 10 assist the 6. One traditional way of connecting the last 4 perfections to the first 6 is as follows. The 7th paramita of skillful means assists the first 3 in making virtuous karma. The 8th perfection of vows or aspirations strengthens number 4, diligence. The 9th paramita of power greatly deepens number 5, meditation. And the 10th perfection of jnana or knowledge expands number 6, prajna or wisdom. Blavatsky speaks of the paramita path as thorny and uphill all the way. The paramita heights are crossed by a path still steeper than that of dhyana or meditation. For the paramitas require altruistic action on the ordinary plane of life as well as virtuous action in the deeper realms of meditation. So here is some encouragement from a Mahayana sutra aimed at ordinary lay persons. It is easy for those who have renounced lay life and become monastics to activate bodhicitta. Yet, if one who lives as a lay person activates the bodhi mind and seeks to tread the bodhisattva path, this is truly inconceivable. Why? Because lay people are so entangled with many adverse causes and conditions. When any lay person activates bodhicitta, devas from every one of the heavens are all greatly surprised and pleased. Then they say to each other, now we have a future Buddha, a teacher of devas and humans. Another sutra says that a single repetition of the 6-syllable mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, completes all 6 perfections. This completion means that the seed of Buddhahood is well and sincerely planted in the fertile soil of bodhicitta vows and practices, thus assuring the future flowering as a Tathagata, or a Buddha. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva taught that there are 3 essential elements for the Mahayana path: compassion for the suffering of all beings, the altruistic bodhicitta resolve to fully unfold the Buddha nature in ourselves and help all beings to do the same, and thirdly, wisdom that is all-inclusive. The bodhicitta vow or intent by itself is a powerful blessing to ourselves and others. It must be deeply held and never allowed to weaken. These 2 elements of compassion and bodhicitta may be the work of several lifetimes. However, as Kamalashila Bodhisattva reminds us, motive alone is not enough. We must practice discipline on ourselves in order to help others do likewise. Without our presence or words radiating these subtle yet real higher energies that result from self-discipline, people are less likely to be reached. Practicing the Paramitas is also necessary for attaining any of the 10 grounds or stages of bodhisattvas. J. Tsongkhapa also agrees that the training methods to achieve Buddhahood are just those of these Paramitas. These 10 golden keys are all that is needed to open any portal to higher planes or spheres of being, as Parukar called these worlds. Mahayana Buddhism calls these portals Dharma gateways into such exalted states and realms. Thus, our thorny way leads to a surrounding world we will be a part of, as well as having a consciousness transformed by wisdom. This essential training is basically twofold. The method of accruing virtuous karma or merit from the first 5, generosity, ethics, patience, diligence, meditation, and secondly, gaining wisdom. The last 4 of the 10 assist the first 6. The karmic merit from practicing 8 of these perfections is aimed at attracting or unfolding higher forces that match or resonate with the higher parts of this globe or higher globes. These more sacred energies will permit us to visit or eventually reside in these finer forms and realms, as well as inspire other beings to tread the Buddha way. The other 2 paramitas, number 6, wisdom, number 10, knowledge, will unfold the perfect Buddha mind. The causes and conditions associated with these stages of bodhisattva practice are endless. The paramitas are actually many more than 10. One sutra, the Lalita Vistara, lists 108 perfections. But these 10 perfections, or just the 6, are all that are required, the minimum, to ascend through the 10 bodhisattva levels leading up to Buddhahood. Each one of the 10 bodhisattva stages does include all of the paramitas, but the first stage focuses on the first paramita of giving, the second ground emphasizes ethics, and so forth through the rest. H.P. Blavatsky says in The Voice of the Silence that the perfections are only keys to the 7 portals, but are not the portals themselves. This may only mean that initially the practice of the Paramitas is weak from our lack of great compassion. While we do possess these golden Paramita keys, we lack the power, purity, and skill to use them. Only later, after much practice, will they function as vowed keys of compassion, which open the locks to the portals. As Nagarjuna says, from compassion all aims are achieved. Great compassion is the panacea. Golden keys are personal efforts towards always being generous, ethical, patient, etc. Therefore, we practice the Paramitas until one or more comes naturally to us. When the personality is purified enough, then we may, before entering the first gate or portal, probably with a guru's help, learn to live in the eternal and learn to part thy body from thy mind, as the voice of the silence suggests. This is the meditative esoteric work that is the path leading through each portal. So Vairagya, the dispassionate central paramita of non-attachment, is required for the esoteric meditation. So inner obstacles or afflictions will not be empowered by attachment or repulsion to what may arise in meditation. It is also taught in the Mahayana that the impetus toward the nobler life does not spring from only our personal efforts, but also from our true nature or self. As the Tibetan Bodhisattva Gampopa writes, our Buddha nature or potential is the primary cause. Quoting, we need to attain unsurpassable enlightenment by freeing ourselves from the confused state of samsara, cyclic, repetitive existence, trapped. But is it possible for inferior persons like ourselves to achieve enlightenment even if we make the effort? Of course it is possible. If we make the effort, why doubt we would attain Buddhahood? All sentient beings, including ourselves, already possess the primary cause for enlightenment, the Buddha essence. As stated in a sutra, the essence of the Buddha pervades all beings. Another sutra says all sentient beings have the Buddha nature. Also, the Sutra of the Great Parinirvana says, as butter permeates milk, likewise the Buddha potential pervades all sentient beings. And yet another sutra also says, even though suchness is not different for any being, one is called Tathagata when it is fully purified. Therefore, all beings are of its essence. As Asvaghosha, another Mahayana sage, put it, bodhisattvas who cherish their aspiration toward Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings have had incalculable lifetimes to ponder on and gain a profound understanding of the divine principle of suchness, and thus entertain no attachment to their attainments obtained through discipline. Knowing the nature of reality is free from greed, bodhisattvas in conformity to reality devote themselves to the paramita of charity. Knowing that reality is free from defilements, which originate from sensual desires, they in conformity to reality devote themselves to the paramita of shila or virtue. Knowing that reality is free from suffering, anger, and anxiety, they, in conformity to reality, devote themselves to the paramita of forbearance. Knowing that the nature of reality does not have any distinction of body and mind and is free from indolence, bodhisattvas, in conformity to it, devote themselves to the paramita of zeal. I'm not using the same English translation because it's good for us. Knowing that reality is always calm and free from confusion, they, in conformity to it, devote themselves to the paramita of meditation. Knowing that the nature of reality is always characterized by knowledge and is free from ignorance, bodhisattvas, in conformity to reality, devote themselves to the paramita of wisdom. This work of countless lifetimes seems daunting, even overwhelming to many. For most of us, a slow and careful approach is actually better than an overconfident one. Otherwise, we race 3 steps forward, and fall back 2 or maybe 4, Bodhisattva Hsuan Hua gave us some good counsel. In order to cultivate all paramitas, we have to choose one paramita to start out with. When we successfully accomplish one paramita, all the paramitas will be accomplished. If it were not that way, how could we finish cultivating so many paramitas in our limited lifespan? There are hundreds of millions of perfections. If we cultivated them one by one, when would we ever finish? Nagarjuna Bodhisattva spends more time praising the first one, Dana Paramita, than any of the others. He says generosity is the primary condition for the realization of nirvana. So generosity is a good choice for a paramita to practice and in the fullness of time master. Generosity brings all manner of benefits. Here are just a few of them. Generosity serves as a treasure trove which constantly follows along with a person. It destroys suffering and bestows bliss on people. It is a good guide showing us the way to the heavens. It is a house of goodness, for it draws in good people. It is a source of peace and security. When one reaches the end of one's life, one's mind remains free of fear. Generosity is marked by kindness, for it is able to bring about the rescue of everyone. It is the gateway to the accumulation of goodness and meritorious qualities. Generosity destroys our poverty and cuts one off from wretched destinies. It is able to preserve and protect the fruit of karmic blessings and bliss. It provides the quality of freedom from a multitude of difficulties. It is a sanctum in which the mind remains free of regret. It is the origin of good dharmas and of one's cultivation of the path. It is a bridge to the realization of the path and to entry into nirvana. It is traversed by the noble ones, the great masters, and those possessed of wisdom. Generosity is that which everyone else, including those of minor virtue and lesser intelligence, should strive to emulate. What approach should we take in cultivating these paramitas? Here's one method. Avalokiteshvara asked the Buddha, how should bodhisattvas cultivate these 6 perfections? The Buddha replied, they should cultivate them by 5 kinds of yoga practice. First is intense devotion to the subtle, wondrous teachings for bodhisattvas which deal with the paramitas. Second is diligent cultivation of glorious knowledge developed by learning, contemplating, and applying 10 kinds of Dharma practice. The second and third one may be the most important. Third is preserving the bodhicitta intent in all situations. Fourth is associating with the Guru. Fifth is constantly working to cultivate good qualities. Next, the 10 Dharma practices mentioned condense all the various approaches to practicing and engaging in the sacred Dharma. Although this is referring to Mahayana doctrines, texts, and practices, all 10 are applicable to Theosophical doctrines, texts, and practices. Theosophy can be found in the mystic or esoteric aspect of any religion. What are these 10 essential practices? They are transcribing the words that form the basis of the sacred Dharma, giving generously to the spread and translation of the teachings. Thirdly, giving to those who teach it, listening to the words of the Dharma, reading Dharma books, memorizing the words that express the Dharma, explaining their meaning to others, chanting from memory, taking the meaning to heart, and meditating on this meaning single-pointedly and in the correct manner. It is taught that these 10 Dharma activities condense all activities that relate to the sacred Dharma, and that each one of the 10 entails an immense amount of good karma. There are literally volumes of teachings on the paramitas in the Bodhisattva collection. So here's one more source on the 3 kinds of each of the 6 major perfections. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara asked the Buddha, how many different kinds of each of the 6 perfections are there? The Buddha replied, there are 3 kinds. The 3 kinds of giving are giving of teaching, giving of goods, and giving of fearlessness. I should press on, giving of fearlessness. The 3 kinds of discipline are the discipline of increasingly giving up what is not good, increasingly giving up what is not good, discipline of increasing developing what is good, and the discipline of increasingly benefiting sentient beings. The 3 kinds of forbearance are the forbearance of bearing injury, the forbearance of serenity in suffering, and the forbearance of truthful observation of realities. The 3 kinds of diligence are diligence as armor, diligence of concerted effort to increasingly develop good qualities, and diligence of concentrated effort to help sentient beings. The 3 kinds of meditation are meditation in a state of bliss without discriminating thought, still and silent, extremely tranquil and impeccable, thus curing the pains of afflictions. Meditation that brings forth virtuous qualities and powers. And thirdly, meditation that brings forth benefit for sentient beings. The 3 kinds of insight are insight focused on conventional worldly truth, insight based on ultimate truth, and insight focused on benefiting sentient beings. The 10 Ground Sutra, also found in chapter 26 in the Avatamsaka Sutra, is a fundamental source on the 10 Paramitas and 10 Bodhisattva stages of progress toward Buddhahood. Here are a few lines on the higher 4 perfections. The corpus does emphasize the 6 more than the 10, but you can find plenty on the 10. A bodhisattva's bringing forth of countless expressions of wisdom constitutes the paramita of skillful means. A bodhisattva's aspiration to develop supreme wisdom constitutes the paramita of vows. A bodhisattva's ability to remain invulnerable to obstruction or ruination by any non-Buddhist followers or by any demons constitutes the paramita of the powers. A bodhisattva's accomplishment of knowing the characteristic features of all dharmas in accordance with reality constitutes the paramita of knowledge. As Dr. Parukar sums up, we follow the age-old precepts of the Masters of Wisdom and Compassion as they've been handed down to us from immemorial time. Live nobly, think nobly, feel nobly, do your duty to all at all times, and in all places, and by all men. In addition to the esoteric section pledge, if you wish to undertake another aspect of the Chela training, one which is the invariable practice in our school, then follow the teaching of the 10 Paramitas of Buddhism, which are always followed in the true schools of esoteric training, and which we attempt to follow. The Paramitas are 10, and the 10 are for those who intend to devote all their life to that resigning of the lower self to the higher in service to the world. There in these rules is the whole path of achievement. Finis. Thank you.
Questions for Nicholas? Where do we start?
What?
Where do we start with the Paramitas?
Where do we start? Well, first you have to seriously want to do this. Oh, yes. So none of these things work except this now. Yes. The first step is to live to benefit mankind, and you have to mean it, and you have to want it, and you have to vow to do it, and really think about it long and hard, and see what's involved, and you can see what's involved. It's a many lifetimes project. I think if you really want to get serious, you make these vows yourself to your higher self. You take refuge formally. Now I know that's kind of a cross to bear to mix metaphors for many people. But it's important if you want to be your path become easier, as M said, to get a contact with Buddha in some meaningful manner. And then I like these 10 Dharma practices. They're very simple, but they're very important and powerful. Where you, I don't know if you can go back. They had the copying the words. In this case, it'd be Theosophical text. It doesn't have to be. It could be any mystic, enlightened text. If that's your path, if it's not Theosophy, it's not Buddhism, you can find something that's wonderful and do what those say, or at least some of them, and you will slowly move forward. The other aspects, meditation, all that, of course, but the 3 fundamentals from the Mahatma letters about celibacy, thought, word, and deed, unselfish motivation, and whatever the other one was in the middle. Those 3 are a basic foundation. So that's one way to start.
Nicholas, you said when we were putting this on the slide, the first one was also, could be copying but also translating, right?
If you say so, that's probably right. I don't remember too well. Let's see what that sounds. Yes, copying, although that's in the list somewhere. I don't know if it was number 1. Oh, transcribing. Transcribing is copying. Yeah, and then you get down to number, listening, explaining, chanting. No, I guess you can help spread the translation, but it requires quite a bit of competence in this field to be able to translate. So that's in the. But you help translators, you encourage good translations, and you can work towards that end. After all, if you're going to memorize and listen and bring it to heart, at some point, translation is not a bad idea, but that's not one of the easier paths. These other 10 are the basics.
Well, I ask it because then it's not only a direct repetition, but it's also, how do you say, then adjusting it to the time and place you're giving the teachings.
When you get to the point of doing that, but first you want to become saturated and understand, and then you can adjust to the audience.
That's, I guess, set or something.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, Jim.
It's very in Viraga. One was missing in your list.
Yes, Virya is in the list. Viraga is HPB's. Interesting, I've never been able to find in the list of paramitas, there are some with 7, and compassion is often there, and skillful means, but not Viraga. But, as I mentioned, it is essential in other aspects of Buddhism, Mahayana, and also it's curious that it's equated with nirvana. So there's something about this dispassion, non-attachment. If you remember the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, regular practice and dispassion are the 2 essentials. So for whatever reason, as I say, I can't find it in an exoteric list, but it's important and it should be there and good for HPB.
Well, the other thing, if I recall, the voice, it states 6 and 4 in number and 10 in number.
Yeah, I think you mean.
Pardon?
Well, go ahead.
Well, you have the list of the 10. Was that? Would that match what is in the voice in terms of the?
I think the quote was 6 and 10, but it could have been 6 or 10. But this 10, yes, this is the Mahayana list of 10. The Theravadins in the Southern School have a similar list. I think 5 are in common. Their list is a little different. And Jita P's list is yet slightly different also, because he has a list of 10 in esoteric tradition, which is a very good list. But it's not quite the same as Theravada or Mahayana. Eldon?
I was just looking at the list, and I was thinking and wondering your reaction on the idea that these 10 things could also be talking about a theosophical practice rather than a Buddhist practice, where instead of Dharma, you say theosophical teachings.
Yes, I think that was actually in the talk.
Okay, maybe I missed that part.
Yeah, that's you plug in.
But like number 2, giving for the spread and translation of theosophical literature.
Correct. Yes.
Like putting it in modern language, or supporting the theosophical teachers, or reading the secret doctrine. I don't know about memorizing. That
Yeah,
may be
sure.
too much.
I
But explaining their meaning and all the rest.
There was an old Buddhist who memorized something like, was it 60,000 pages of the 3 baskets. 60,000 pages. And he did it, he started when he was 40 or something, and with 10 or 15 years he did it. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Thank you, Nicholas, for your lecture, because you answered many questions I had for a long time. Because for our members, I tried to collect parts of the Buddhic books about the Paramitas, and I was totally confused because I found everywhere other meanings, and most of them were very superficial. I had always the idea that I chose the exoteric books. And when your lecture becomes an article, please can you give a list of references where we can find very good explanations in Buddhic literature of the Paramitas, for we have volume 1 of the esoteric teachings of GDP, and we have the Voice of the Silence, but not so much other literature in the theosophical field.
Yes, I was mistaken. I was very bad to not do that. I thought about it, but I'll tell you right now, go to Tsongkhapa's great treatise on stages of the path, volume 2. You'll find 100 pages or so on the Paramitas. Geshe Sopa, with an S, has a big commentary in volume 3, which is, Kenny, what's the title of Sopa's commentary? He has 200 pages on it. This Gampopa that I quoted, his jewel ornament, you'll find in several translations, is excellent on the Paramitas. Most of these Avalokiteshvara Ask Buddha things are coming from the Samdhi Nirmanakana Sutra, which is in 3 versions, and they have different English titles. One of them is Buddhist Yoga, believe it or not. It's called by, and Cleary translates that. And in the chapter, there's a chapter on the Paramitas with much more details than I sketched. So go to that sutra translation. Another one by Keenan. What's some other good ones? Gallons of good stuff out there, but I will shape up and try to give a good source list. Kenny's got something.
Hello? The Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva is probably many excellent English translations available. It's outlined over the Paramitas and their commentaries by the Dalai Lama on the Wisdom chapter, which is a very deep chapter.
Yes, that's a great one. Yes, Dara. Wait for the machine.
You were saying that you did have, after these quotes, references so people would know.
Yes, I can tell you, if you ask about a quote, I can tell you from my little note, but I don't have a nice bibliographic sources list.
But if you have it in footnotes or as you go along, people will see those, is that correct?
Not in the form they're in now. I have to make them a lot prettier and more sensible.
Uh-huh.
They're just for me.
I have a very small question, Nicholas. Number 8, chancing for memory. How do we see that? Is that be able to reproduce the meaning of the text or literal?
No, you don't have to. I mean, chanting from memory is just chanting the words that you've memorized. But in the process of memorization, of course, you're always contemplating the meaning. So when your chanting is done with meaning, when you know what you're sending out to the Akash, much more powerful, much more beneficial for you and everybody else. Am I free? Is that it?